Jinks, released in 1988 for the Atari 7800 Pro system and basically a port of a computer game, is a different twist on the old Breakout formula in that instead of breaking the wall down with a ball and paddle, you're bouncing a ball with your triangular paddle gimmick around this techno-infused nightmare of garish colors striking random shapes and things. And you could flip the paddle, which serves to alter the trajectory of the ball, at least in theory. Fun fact, I got this from the Great Classic Game Room eBay clearance sale, for lack of a better term, during a time when they were selling off some games, and I got this as well as another 700 title for a good deal that was offset by a ridiculous shipping price. Oh well. Money that, in hindsight, could have been better spent on a couple decent homebrews instead went to a couple vintage 700 titles, one of which is Jinks, and Jinks is... well, I guess there's a reason why this never got the CGR treatment back in the day, but I digress. So you start the game, you see the wonderful rainbow Atari splash screen, and then... welcome. So we've got sampled bits ripped straight from Gauntlet to greet us on this wonderful looking title screen, along with some eerily ethereal title music that plays during the titles and the menus and such. That's actually quite impressive. Didn't think I would play a game on the Atari 7800 Pro system with sampled voices, but there you go. The general idea of Jinks is basically to guide the ball from one side of the course to the other in order to drop it into this portal gimmick to exit the level, from which you'll enter an interlude screen, as they call it, where you can pick from one of 4 levels to progress to, where you pretty much do the same thing. Guide the ball to the exit, back to the screen, repeat the process over and over and over again. The game only has 4 levels, but each subsequent entry to a level will increase the difficulty of that level by adding additional hazards and such. Touching a hazard with your paddle will cause it to shrink, and a second hit will subsequently destroy the paddle, costing you 1 life. Lose all your lives and it's game over. At the same time, you'll want to keep the ball away from these chomping teeth. If the teeth gobbles up the ball, it's game over no matter how many lives you have. You can uncover additional balls in a level, but they only apply to that level, they don't carry over to another. So if you found a ball in one level, then you go to another level, and your ball gets eaten, it's game over. And let me tell you something, I've gotten more game overs from balls getting eaten than I have paddles getting destroyed. So... Jinks is a breakout style game that does not use the 2600 paddle controller, and the reason for that is because in Jinks you could actually move the paddle around in 8 directions, which you'll need to do in order to navigate the terrain in each level. Using the stock 7800 joystick or gamepad, button 1 flips your paddle, the straight side allows you to bounce the ball while the angled sides deflects the ball in a different direction with no real power behind the hit, and you could use this to somewhat drag the ball along the ground, just don't do it often because the ball could easily rematerialize backwards and come from behind. Pressing button 2 causes the screen to shake, often used to break a ball's repetitive sequence to get it out of a loop or something. Neat idea in theory, but not quite as useful as it may seem. Jinks is an interesting take on the traditional breakout style that doesn't quite work. Part of it has to do with the ball physics being somewhat awkward, and despite some controls designed to allow you to manipulate the ball as much as possible, the path it takes ultimately boils down to random chance rather than any effort on your part, especially in the second level where you have these orbs that will mess around with the ball's trajectories even more so than it already would. Another problem involves the somewhat haphazard level design, which has some stuff laid out without any real care, and the color choices, or lack thereof, makes it difficult to discern which objects are solid and which are just part of the background, so it's really trial and error in that regard. There are bonus pickups you could collect with your ball, notably a ship repair icon to sort of restore your paddle if it's damaged, a ball checkpoint, so you could respawn another ball if you lose your first one, and some bonus points. But that's about the extent of it. You have bricks to break, the breakout aspect made even more obvious, but there doesn't seem to be much point other than to provide another obstacle or annoyance to overcome. Seems like the more I play Jinks, the less interested I am in its machinations, and whatever it was trying to do with this style of play is ultimately lost. This talk of level design also brings to mind the graphics, which are quite honestly an eyesore with the pinkish colors and such. Like I said, there's no attempt to try and differentiate the background elements and solid matter that you have to overcome. Not to mention, it's generally not a pretty game to look at, even by the standards of Atari 7800. How we went from this beautiful looking title screen to this is confounding, and that this position also applies to the sound. Title screen gives you sampled speech and sound, nice tune, and then you get to the game and you have these annoying ball bouncing sound effects, and some other annoying sound effects pop up every so often. It's not good. It's not. Really isn't. Overall, I'll give Jinks this much. It tried to do something different from the usual breakout type game, and sometimes when you're trying something different, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And Jinks is one of those times where it really doesn't work. Maybe if you could work out its kinks, you might get something out of Jinks, but for the rest of you, this is one game you can easily skip.